Welcome to Watch Symposium. I'm Austin. You might remember a few weeks back I made a video about the September issue of National Geographic. There were a few Rolex watches, actually one Rolex watch, but probably different examples in this magazine. The first was the advertisement on the first page. This is a 42mm Explorer 2. I'll put a link in the description to that video, by the way. And then later on, there's an article, and on page 90, there's a picture of a gentleman on a mountain in Chile setting up a weather station, and he's wearing the very same watch, the Explorer 2. You can see him right there. That's Dr. Baker Perry. And they even mention Rolex in the text of the article because they funded this expedition. I've got some sort of follow-up information, behind the sort of scenes information about this, and I think it's very interesting, and it begs the question, are Rolex cheap bastards? Okay, we'll get to that, but first, where does this come from? This comes from Captain Danny, all right? Captain Danny, who writes for Rolex Magazine. If you don't know Rolex Magazine, if you're not checking out the content over at Rolex Magazine, well, I don't know why you're not, because they get the scoops. There's a connection between Danny and the people at Rolex, meaning they talk back and forth. So a lot of the interesting scoops that come our way come via Danny, all right? So he's a great guy to know. And he interviewed Dr. Perry, all right? And again, Dr. Perry's this guy wearing the watch in the magazine, all right? And I'm sure there's an article coming out about that. Now, Danny sent me an unpublished picture from National Geographic, and we cover this in the live show. Now, this is all old hat for subscribers and viewers of my live show channel. I do live shows every day, and we covered this earlier. That's where the real groundbreaking news is released here at Watch Symposium. It takes a while to put these videos together. So if you really want the breaking news, be sure to subscribe to that channel. I'll put a link in the description. But as I covered this morning, Danny sent me a picture. This is an unpublished picture from National Geographic, and it's a pretty cool thing because to have an unpublished picture from National Geographic themselves and to be able to sort of break it to the public, how cool is that? Well, you're looking at it right here, and here is Dr. Perry wearing the watch, and it's a beautiful picture. In fact, I prefer this picture a little bit more, but he's not doing as much as he is here, so this is probably more appropriate for the article. But you can really see the Explorer 2. It's beautiful. It looks great with those snow-capped mountains in the back. I mean, there's nothing like an Explorer 2 Polar in snow. That's what it's made for, right? Now, Danny asked Dr. Perry about using this watch, and according to Perry, he sets the GMT time to UTC time, which is basically Greenwich Mean Time, and he's able to do the calculations. Now, it makes me wonder, wouldn't a GMT Master 2 work a little bit better? You could just use that rotating bezel. You wouldn't have to do the calculations in your head. But of course, Rolex gave this watch to him to wear on the mountain because it's sort of like their mountaineering watch, and for them to give him a GMT function watch, it just, you know, when it comes to the marketing angle, it wouldn't work as well, so I get that. But I love those rotating bezels. I'll just leave it at that. If you zoom in, you can see that, assuming this is Chile, it's 9 in the morning or so, and if we do assume he's in Chile, then you gotta wonder, okay, the 24-hour hand is set to 9 p.m. Okay, so that doesn't seem to be UTC time. Maybe he was tracking the time zones in China or Russia, or the edges of Mongolia. I'm not really sure, but that's kind of an interesting note there. Now, here's the whole thing, all right? And if you've watched Dr. Rolex PhD's video on Rolex.org, I'll put a link in the description. That's a really interesting video, and I love Rolex.org. I've checked it out, and you can see the watches in the field. Now, many of us, myself included, were drawn to Rolex via their tool watch past, and the idea that these watches are for explorers and adventurers, men and women of action in the field, facing harsh climates and environments, and they need the right tool for the job. And that's what really drew me in that's a great, well, if you've ever been to the Rolex website, it's a great angle, it's a great marketing angle, but it's legitimate because back in the 60s and 70s, these really were the tools for the job. All right, these days that's debatable, but if you've ever seen Rolex.org, that's a great site to see what kind of programs Rolex is funding, and you get to see the people that are wearing these watches in the field, and it's kind of cool because beautiful footage, and you kind of see what Rolex is turning their attention to, the humanitarian causes, the environmental causes, and it can make you feel good about spending your money on Rolex and supporting Rolex, and spending hundreds of dollars on inserts, knowing that it's kind of going to a good place. But the best thing, of course, is you see the watches on these people's wrists. And I have a mixture of awe and envy because it's got to be cool to be gifted a Rolex watch to use in the field, and you've got your Rolex watch for the rest of your life, and the stories you can make with it. Or is that the case? Well, here's where it gets kind of interesting. This is the whole point of the video. Are these watches given or loaned? And Danny asked Dr. Baker for another picture. Dr. Baker responded back. He said, I don't have any more pictures. Now, of course, if you had the watch, you could just snap a picture of it, right? How hard would that be? Just send Danny a wrist shot. But he didn't have that. And so Danny and I talked back and forth, and we were both super curious. I mean, we thought the watch was given to him, gifted to him. It's his watch, right? I mean, that's why you become an ambassador, right? Okay, no, it's just to get the funding and stuff. I get that. But that's what I like to envision when I go to Rolex.org. And Danny reached out to him again, and it turned out it was loaned to him. All right, so the pictures in this magazine, he was wearing it, he took it on the mountain, I guess takes it on expeditions, tests it out, but then he's got to give it back to Rolex. So it's not his watch. And that's unfortunate. I like the idea that this was Dr. Baker's Rolex, and it would perhaps see him into his old age, and maybe even sort of have its own sort of history and provenance, and I guess it still does, but just for that short period that he was loaned it. So are Rolex cheap bastards? I mean, could they at the very least have taken the watch back? And I know they need to do that to test it and to see how it fared in the environment, but then maybe give him a new one and say, thank you for testing it. This is yours, enjoy it as you will. And, in the future, if he's speaking at some event, don't they want him to be wearing the watch that was in this magazine? I mean, I don't know if I ever saw a lecture by Dr. Baker and I saw that watch, I'd be like, oh man, that is so cool. I know that watch went. I've got a picture of that watch. That would be so cool. I mean, I'd probably be more interested in the watch than the lecture, but whatever, right? But he's probably going to be wearing no watch or a G-Shock, or who knows? I don't know. I mean, if he's going to be wearing an Explorer 2, he's going to be paying for it with his own money. So that's kind of weird. It also raises the question, what happens to his watch? I mean, after the fact, they can't sell it as new. I mean, are they going to polish it and then sell it as new? That would be crazy. They're probably not going to do that. But where does it wind up? I mean, is there like a museum? Will there be a museum in the future? But what's going to happen to it? Is it just going to go into their deep, dark Rolex vault, never to be seen again? Do you remember the last scene in Raiders of the Lost Ark, the Indiana Jones film? And the Ark is being wheeled into this, giant warehouse of crates, just never to see the light of day again. Is that the case? I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure. So we'll never know, but I was a little bit shocked and more than a little disappointed to know that this was a loaner, and we're not looking at this guy's real watch, that wherever he is probably still on his wrist. That's not the case. This watch is, somewhere in Geneva probably, and it messed up my image of, the adventure, the explorer with his one watch to take him or her through life. Yeah, that's not the case. So much for that image, right? So, in my opinion, Rolex probably should rethink that. And look, I I know they need to get the watch back to test it and all that, but hook these guys up, hook these women up with a watch to wear. I mean, people notice that kind of thing, and look, now that this is out and people know it, I mean, this isn't a good look, Rolex. So consider hooking these people up with a Rolex, because it's important for us that love that idea of these watches as being for adventurers and explorers, one watch to wear on the wrist to the day you die. And you want to push that image. That's the bread and butter of that marketing angle. And this little piece of reality dug into that a little bit. Let me know what you think. Take care. Thanks for watching. See you next time. All right, some final thoughts. A viewer reached out, and he apparently knows somebody who had a project sponsored by Rolex, and they did get a watch. And not only that, but they have free lifetime services for their watch, free overhauls. So I don't know how long ago they got their watch. I don't know if Rolex has stopped gifting watches, but anyway, they fund a lot of projects. I don't think they can give everybody a watch, so just a notation.